What's up? Welcome into today's episode of Pushing the Pile, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. We got a lot to break down on today's episode. We got Matt Ryan's quarterback of the week coming up in a little bit. We got some QB observations. Michael Penix Jr., his very first start, very much impressed me. We'll see if he impressed Matt here in a second. But we're going to start with a little Sunday night football recap because after everyone and their mother penciled in the Bucs to be NFC South champs, will they no longer control their own destiny after losing to the Dallas Cowboys? Matt, what did you see in this one? How did the Cowboys slow down this Bucs offense that seemingly no one else could the past few weeks?
Turnovers, right? I mean, particularly at the end, the interception, like over the top, that was an unbelievable play. And then kind of the fumble to ice it at the end was really the key, but it looked to me like Baker Mayfield was out of sorts early, right? Moving him around. And I know he's a big movement guy in the pocket, but it looked like Mike Zimmer did a good job. I mean, they were loaded up in double A's the entire night, it felt like, right? Two backers mugged in the A gaps. Whether they were coming or not, right? You have to account, you have to set your protections for it, and it does speed up your clock. So I thought Dallas did a great job. And quite frankly, they've been playing pretty well the last 3 or 4 weeks. Offensively, defensively, they've done a good job. You have to give Mike McCarthy credit, for kind of steadying that ship with all of the injuries that they've had. The other guy I want to give a shout out, CeeDee Lamb, man, good for him, right? You get eliminated from the playoffs, and I know the commentators were talking about it last night, but like he was out there, he was grinding through it, man, and I love seeing that from a competitive guy. From the wide receiver position, going out there and putting it on the line, making plays. I think that's stuff that carries over for them in the future, and hopefully something they can build on. But all around good performance from the Cowboys.
Mike, the one thing that I noticed, sorry, Mike, the one thing I noticed early was just this Cowboys offense was in rhythm. And the ball was out on time, and they were taking what the defense gave them. And when you've got a guy back there like Cooper Rush, obviously he's not going to light the world on fire, but he does just enough to get this offense rolling. And he does have the presence of mind to get the ball into CeeDee Lamb's hands. I thought that was a big part of their victory efforts. Also, Brandon Aubrey, an absolute robot. I think we take for granted how difficult the kicking position is, even when you're at home. But I mean, you're talking about 3 or 4 kicks from past 50 yards, and people just kind of yawn at it because they've grown so accustomed to it. Also, to your point, Matt, this group found out midday that they were eliminated from the playoffs. So all their efforts were for naught. So for them to come out, and I heard Micah Parsons talking with Tony Dungy pregame about we're going to find out about our team's character. And you could see with the effort that they put forth that this team does have a lot of character. They've got some moxie, and you can roll it into next season. As it pertains to the Mike Zimmer pressure package, that double A mug is tough, man. Changes everybody's sets. You got to mic it the right way. Baker's checking out who he's hot off the edge. And sometimes, we saw it early. He took his eye off the football and wasn't able to get a good grip on the ball and make the proper throw that we've grown so accustomed to Baker making. So a combination of Mike Zimmer doing things he's done for decades schematically, and that offense doing just enough, and those turnovers at the end. I really thought Baker was going to have a chance at the end there, Matt, and he did. We had him on the ropes.
They were going to win. Yeah, I thought they were going to win. I love that we're talking kickers. So I'm watching that game last night, and Coach Cowher's telling me Boswell's the best kicker in the league from Pittsburgh, and he's probably right. He's had an unbelievable year. But I text him when I'm watching that game. I'm like, dude, Aubrey is hitting the back of the net from like 58 yards deep, and they're dead center. It's impressive what he's doing. A little shout out to him. We don't talk kickers often, but that was fun to watch.
He tied the record for most 50-plus yard field goals in a game. And I feel like we say 50-plus, right? And it's a 51-yarder or a 50-yarder. It ain't the same as quite what he's been doing this year. 2 58-yarders in this game. It just seems like that extra 7 or 8 yards at that point, that's when you're tipping out a lot of guys' legs. I mean, we saw, he was obviously indoors, but we saw a lot of guys in the elements coming up short from that distance. I don't think Aubrey, even if you put 25 degrees out there, even if he put a little wind, I don't think those were coming up short. Those are absolute boomers that he puts through the net there. Got to rep my Irish, obviously, Notre Dame guy there. So Brandon Aubrey, shout out to him. Cowboys, though, 4-1 their last 5 games now. 7-8 record. They're obviously eliminated from the playoffs, like you mentioned, when Washington upset the Eagles. But Do we think, I mean, everyone wrote Mike McCarthy off as a postseason fire. Do they keep Mike McCarthy and Mike Zimmerman? Does this staff stay intact going into next season?
You asking me or Matt first? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go.
Go ahead.
I think yes, because I think about who else are you going to get, right? And that becomes the question I have all the time, whether it's coach or quarterback. Who are you going to have come in and feel like is going to do a better job? I don't love everything they do offensively. That's just my perspective on watching them. I think they're a little bit stale. I agree. I thought they did a good job with Cooper Rush last night of being efficient, running the football, kind of getting the ball out on time. I'd love to see maybe a little bit more creativity, but I'd also be open to having Mike, somebody come in, right, and assist with that. Of maybe somebody, even if he's still calling the plays, right, assist with some of the game planning. But more and more, I think Mike McCarthy is going to be there next year. I think the way that locker room has responded, the way their star players have kind of come to his back, the effort that they're playing with, because I think that was on display yesterday. There were some bad teams that didn't look like that, that didn't look like they were giving the effort that we saw from the Dallas Cowboys that have been eliminated. So I think more and more, I think Mike McCarthy is going to be back there.
Yeah, Matt, that's what it comes down to me. In my opinion, it's the effort. And these weeks that are essentially meaningless weeks in terms of, we're not going to go to the postseason. That's where you find out a lot about these guys. And I thought it was clear from the onset of that football game, the Cowboys had some juice. And, I'll leave it to the quarterback to talk about the stylistic nature of their offense and their lack of creativity. And, some of the things we've grown accustomed to seeing from these young hotshot coordinators. But when the effort's there, it's obvious. And I mean, obviously, I'm a Bears fan, and I can look at some of these players on the defensive or offensive side of the ball, and I could say, I don't think he's committed right now. I don't think he is doing what needs to be done at this level of football. And I saw that from the Cowboys, and it was a good sign for Mike McCarthy.
Let's get to the flip side here. Tampa Bay Bucks.
Yeah,
8-7 now. Or you go ahead, Matt.
No. Go ahead.
Let's get to the Bucks. They're 8-7 now, and Falcons sitting at 8-7 as well. We obviously know that the Falcons own that tiebreaker from the two head-to-head wins they had. The remaining schedule for both Tampa Bay, they have Carolina in New Orleans. Atlanta has Washington and Carolina. So Tampa Bay, a little easier go of it, but really just if Atlanta can win their next two games, they are in. Tampa can still actually sneak in if obviously Atlanta beats Washington this week, and then Washington loses in week 18 to the Cowboys, and the Bucks win out. So a little bit of a scenario there to get that last wild card. Do we think the Bucks are eliminated though, Matt, at this point in time, or do we think they end up still getting back in the playoffs?
I wouldn't feel comfortable saying they're eliminated. I loved the Falcons yesterday getting the job done. This game we've got coming up between the Falcons and Commanders is going to be huge, right? You've got a lot of storylines in there. The playoff picture being one of them, the NFC South race being one of them. Falcons going against Dan Quinn, former coach there, that being another one. Two rookie quarterbacks going out there. There's a lot to like about that game next week, and I really think that's going to be the determining factor, right, for the NFC South. I think if Atlanta wins that game, I think they're going to the playoffs. And I don't know. Maybe they could backdoor in. I think Washington, with that gutsy win yesterday, I think that momentum boost. I think they're going to find a way to win one of their two next games to get into the playoffs. I really feel like they've earned that, and they're going to do it in the next 2 weeks. So it's going to be fun to see, but I'm not comfortable eliminating the Bucks yet. Yeah,
I will say if I had to pick, I do think Washington wins next week, and I think the Bucks win out, which would mean obviously the Bucks end up making the playoffs. But I think it's a little tighter than the Bucks wanted it to be. They really missed that opportunity on Sunday night. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. After that, going to get to Matt Ryan's quarterback observations and his vaunted quarterback of the week right after this. We are back here on Pushing the Pile, talking about quarterbacks throughout the NFL, specifically one rookie who made his very first start this past weekend for Matt Ryan's former team, the Atlanta Falcons, Michael Penix Jr., 8th overall pick. The stat line, in my opinion, doesn't do him justice. 18 of 27, no touchdowns, an interception, 207 yards. But it was a lot better than that, in my opinion, just from going back and watching the tape. Matt, what did you see from this rookie in his very first start?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think I thought he played well. I think the biggest compliment I can give is he played how I expected him to play, given what I know about him, right? He's an accurate passer. He's got a strong arm, good touch, good mobility. I thought he threw crossing routes extremely well yesterday, on time, with the right trajectory, the right pace. He stopped, I think it was Drake London on a crossing route to kind of before he was getting to traffic. He led some guys in those, which was nice. I thought his best throw of the day was a pass interference call, right? They have the deep post that he's taking over the top, and wide receiver gets yanked. If he doesn't get yanked, that ball is falling right in the breadbasket, right? And that's, as you said, that stat line becomes very different. You're talking about 40, 50 yards passing, adding to his numbers. The interception, in my opinion, that's on Kyle Pitts, right? That's a play that he's got to make. So I thought Michael Penix played well. In talking with some of their coaches after the game, I was asking them, what was he like on the sideline? What was, the composure like, the communication like? And they said he was excellent in that department. So I thought he checked all the boxes you want to see from a first-time starter, first action in regular season game, to go out there to be composed, to communicate with the staff, to be accurate throwing the football. I thought that was an A. I thought he did excellent yesterday.
And Matt, I think it's important to point out this. It's not like Kirk Cousins was lighting the world up offensively. He went down and Penix comes in. He's asked to just pick up where he left off. This is a guy who's asked to start a fire in the woods without matches for this offense. And that's what he did for him. And the one thing that I think is really important is this offensive line, they would run the football 50 times in a ball game if you asked them to. You know your buddies on staff, and you know every offensive lineman you ever played quarterback for. We want to run the football. We understand that we have to throw it sometimes, but I think that with Michael Penix's ability to have that mobility and to threaten all edges of the football field, like we've talked about numerous times, it opens up things for the other stars in that roster. So when you take a look at the stretch game, now it's front side defensive lineman trying to box in Bijan Robinson. Backside ends can't pursue because Penix could come out the backside on nude boot. You've got a guy who can do everything. And I talked about this on the show yesterday. Him being left-handed presents so many different looks for that second level of the defense. They're so used to protecting one side of the field off of boot. One side of the field is definitely the priority for a right-handed quarterback. Now with this lefty, so many things are opening up. And it just looks better when a left-handed quarterback's out there. No offense to righties. I just wish that all quarterbacks were left-handed, Matt.
Yeah, it's like golfers, man. Golf swings look better left-handed. I will say this, though. One of the things, and I don't want to pile on Kirk because, listen, Kirk's had a hell of a career, right? He's been a great player for a long time. And, Kyle, you and I talked about it on Tops yesterday, right? Aaron Rodgers is finally looking like himself coming off that Achilles injuries. And maybe that's the case for Kirk moving forward, right? Getting a full year healthy and kind of getting his legs back underneath him. But there was a deep out route that Penix hit yesterday that was thrown, and I like to say it's hugging the ceiling, right? So it's thrown high enough, but that's firm, and it just hugs the top of the ceiling and dropped in right where it was supposed to be. And that's something that the Falcons had tried to do for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks where they've had opportunities for balls on the sideline, and Penix made it look effortless. And I think that's one of the areas when we talk about exposing all parts of the field, Michael Penix can do that. I thought it was a good game plan, too. I didn't think they asked him to do too much. The defense played well, obviously 2 pick sixes, but running the football, some of the chunk plays off of it, it's a really good mix for a young quarterback to have success.
And you saw the difference from the very first pass he had in the game. It was like a half roll to a deep comeback, like a 20-yard comeback. And it was incomplete. I think Raymond McLeod probably should have caught it. It was a great throw. But one, Kirk Cousins rolling to his left, I'm not sure you even call a play like that because of making a 20-yard throw, rolling to his left. I'm not sure he would have had the gas to have it. So it's a concept that just like they couldn't have run, and he threw it well before the break on the route. So like two things you want to see from a rookie quarterback: the arm to do it, the anticipation to do it. He did it. And then 9 pressure dropbacks, didn't take a single sack. That to me is who he was in college. My favorite stat all draft season was that he took fewer sacks in 6 years than Caleb Williams did his final year at USC. And that's a quarterback. That's a quarterback stat, sacks. People want to blame the offensive line, but quarterbacks, as you know, Matt, because you were one of them, quarterbacks avoid sacks or they don't. Some guys bring it on themselves. Some guys don't.
All
Michael
sacks
Penix
are on
Jr.
the quarterback.
More often than not was a guy that avoided them.
You know as well as I do, Kyle, sometimes they're not.
Throw it!
All right, we're going to go from Michael Penix Jr., though, to some of the other quarterbacks around the NFL. Just quickly here, we saw a bunch of backups around the league this week, whether it was DTR, whether it was Mason Rudolph. I think you can even throw like Aiden O'Connell in that mix. Are there any backups that have impressed you in any way, shape, or form this season or this past week that make you think that they could be starters down the line, if not for their teams, but for others?
Of those 3 guys you mentioned, I don't think so. And, watching them yesterday, I thought DTR moved around pretty well. Completion percentage was fine, but, turnovers are tough. I think Aiden O'Connell, I thought he played well yesterday, but I don't think that changes their opinion of what they need to do at the quarterback position moving forward. And then, Mason Rudolph, again, I think is a backup. So I think all of these guys kind of play to what their role is. It's not a knock on them. It's just that's just how I view it. I don't think any of those 3 did enough to sit there and say, this guy deserves a chance to be out there, pulling the trigger week in and week out for a ball club.
I think we're going to find out a lot about Spencer Rattler when he travels to Lambeau Field and it's 30 degrees and he's got to match production with a guy like Jordan Love. And with the injuries they have on the offensive side of the ball, Alvin Kamara is going to be out. MVS is dealing with stuff. It's going to be a lot of stuff put on Spencer Rattler's plate. So we're going to find out a lot about that. But we talked about Cooper Rush earlier, his ability to stay on schedule. He has impressed me. Obviously, there's been some lackluster performances. But I remember playing with a guy like Josh McCown. And when you've got a dude who can fill in and not necessarily meet production of your starter, but keep you above water, you've always got a chance. And those guys are extremely valued in the National Football League.
All right, let's move to some backups to a guy who won't be a backup anytime soon. It's Matt Ryan's quarterback of the week. Matt, who do you got this week?
Jayden Daniels, man, got to go with the rookie. That performance yesterday, the poise, going against one of the best, if not the best defense in the league. And the thing I loved about it, too, is it wasn't all perfect, right? He's got a couple of turnovers, but he keeps fighting through it, gives them a chance at the end of the ball game. The throw at the end is a really good throw right in the middle of the end zone. The thing I loved about it, though, was his footwork. If you go back and watch it, right, his feet it's not moving too fast. It's not moving too slow. It's in perfect rhythm with the game on the line, under 10 seconds left in the game. And they're hugging the ground, right? Like keep your feet in the ground. So when it pops down there, you can get that front foot to strike fast and drive the football. I thought it was a phenomenal performance from him. It's been a phenomenal performance all year. I think he's the offensive rookie of the year. I think he cemented that yesterday. And I give him the game ball for the week.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Matt, in terms of him being the offensive rookie in the year. And the thing that's most impressive, obviously, 5 touchdowns, 75 yards on the ground, a true to life dual threat. But the one thing I love about this guy is he just does not blink. And you go out there and you're playing against the Eagles and they go up quick in a spectacular fashion with their running game. And you just don't blink. You see that you're not out of it yet, and you know that if you're an offensive lineman on the team that has Jayden Daniels, you have an opportunity to win every football game. Until there's zeros on the clock, like my buddy Patrick Mahomes, you're not out of the football game. And it took him down into single-digit seconds to get down there and score. And the pick late, followed by not blinking, followed by driving him down the field again, it's just so impressive. The guy's done it week in, week out.
Yeah, that late pick to then game-winning drive when a lot of quarterbacks, or I mean, any quarterback in the NFL, you can excuse them for thinking that's it after you threw that pick. And until a lot of people, I think, thought that was it after he threw that pick. But the fact that he can rebound from that and not play tight afterwards, I think a lot of quarterbacks, after they throw a pick, you get in this sort of mindset of, oh, I can't lose the game again, right? Trying not to lose the game again. But I think regardless of the situation, and you've seen it all season long with Jayden Daniels, he's not playing to not lose, right? He's going out there playing to win. He's going to, when it's the end of a game situation, when you got to have it, he's going to take that chance, right? And I think a lot of quarterbacks, what separates the guys who are elite in those situations from the guys who continually fall short is that it ain't going to be easy. It ain't going to be this wide open window you're going to get at the end of the games. Those just aren't going to happen because defenses know what's up at those situations. You have to be pinpoint accurate, anticipatory, and take a chance even if you think it may not be wide open. And he did that more often than not. And that's obviously, like, to see a guy this early on in his career doing that, nothing short of special, in my opinion. Any other quarterbacks catch your eye to maybe give an honorable mention to this week, Matt?
Michael Penix might be there. It might be two rookies, given the circumstances. And I know we talked about Penix earlier, but given the circumstances coming in, the way he played, I was kind of with you. You said it from the start. The stat line doesn't tell the story. I thought he played well. So I want to give him some love. But I just want to finish up on one thing on Jayden Daniels is, in critical situations, when you see guys after throwing that late pick, right? One of the things I think you'd see with young players, and one of the things I think we all struggle with as quarterbacks is you start to rush after a mistake or something like that. His tempo of his drops never changed, right? And the jawline never got like clenched or uptight, right? He's smiling, he's relaxed. It's the kind of makeup that you have to have, because inevitably you're going to throw picks, and you're going to throw picks at inopportune times, and it's how you respond. And for him to do that with all the weight of that football game yesterday, a massive hats off to him.
Yeah, Daniels tied the rookie record with 5 passing touchdowns and became only the 3rd player in NFL history with 5 passing touchdowns and 75+ rushing yards in a game. Different type of dude, different type of performance. There you have it. Thanks so much for Matt Ryan for joining the show, as he does every single Monday. We're going to take a quick break. After that, going to get Jonathan Jones to join the program to break down all storylines from Week 6. What's up? Jonathan Jones joins the program here to talk a little storylines coming out of Week 16, and there's no bigger storyline, in my opinion, than Sam Darnold and what he did at the end of that Seahawks game, the throw he made, one of the plays of the season, touchdown to Justin Jefferson. He goes 22 of 35, 246 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's gone from what people may have called a game manager early on this season to a guy who's legitimately going out there and winning them football games. So, Jonathan, I want your opinion. What do you see as Sam Darnold's future right now? Because they're going to have a decision on their hands after drafting J.J. McCarthy in the top 10 last year.
Yeah, they certainly are, right? And it is unclear right now what ultimately is going to happen with Sam Darnold. But folks around the league expect that the Vikings are going to make as great an effort as they possibly can to retain Sam Darnold. Look, they have a couple options. You can let Sam Darnold walk in free agency. We know this is a weak free agent quarterback class. It gets even weaker if you assume Russell Wilson signs back with the Pittsburgh Steelers. So immediately, and honestly, regardless of Russ, Sam Darnold could be considered the best free agent quarterback of the class. So what sort of contract would he fetch out on the open market? Probably better than Baker Mayfield, 3 years, $100 million or so. So we're talking in the mid-30s, right? Or the Minnesota Vikings could franchise tag Sam Darnold if that's what they choose to do, or they could sign him to that sort of contract, that mid-30s like deal. If they do one of the final 2 options and they retain Sam Darnold, what does that mean for J.J. McCarthy? Well, someone said to me, maybe this turns into a Jordan Love type situation where McCarthy, a first-round pick, winds up riding the bench for the first couple of years. Look, the Vikings have not said what their plans are beyond this year. They continue to reiterate they are focused on 2024. They're happy with Sam Darnold. They said that when they signed Daniel Jones, that this is about this year. This isn't about the future, but they are well insulated, well prepared for the future. And it really isn't a commentary on J.J. McCarthy's knee and how he's coming along in his recovery. We know that he had the meniscus surgery, then he had a second procedure. I don't have any indication that he would not be ready for week 1, but how do you ignore what Sam Darnold has done at the most important position in this sport? I think the Vikings would be hard-pressed to ignore it. And I also think that Sam Darnold has been a part of a number of bad situations. The Jets, with whom he has won in his career as many games as he has won this year alone with the Minnesota Vikings. He was in a bad situation with Carolina, and then he was the backup in San Francisco. So I don't think that Sam Darnold is necessarily going to go out there and go chase a check. It's not going to be an auction where he goes to the highest bidder necessarily, but it will, unless the Vikings franchise tag him, and there would be a lot of conversations around that. I do believe it will ultimately be up to him, and I believe that the Vikings, if you ask for my opinion, the Vikings would certainly want to have him back for 2025 and potentially beyond.
Hey, look, Sam Darnold was, what was he, the top pick? Top pick, JJ?
2.
That is number 2 pick. Well, you know what? I was a 20 pick, so anything under the 10 is a top pick, in my opinion. So he was a top pick at the quarterback position. He's not hurting at all for bread. One thing I think people fail to understand about people in the National Football League is we would rather be in a situation, for the most part, I can't speak for everybody, but particularly quarterbacks whose entire everything is judged on the quarterback's performance. Wins are a quarterback stat. We got a lot of meatball fans. I think Sam Darnold is as at peace with his football career in Minnesota and in a perfect situation with Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores' defense and the success that they've had. So if you were to tell me that Sam Darnold was going to go chase a check, I would tell you you're probably dead wrong. I think it is a great situation for the Minnesota Vikings. And the guys in the locker room will probably echo the same sentiment that I'm about to. Sam Darnold should be a Minnesota Viking next year. Sam Darnold should be the starting quarterback. He has taken this team by the reins. He is the unquestioned leader in that locker room on the offensive side of the football. And I think having J.J. McCarthy is just it is what it is. It's a tremendous insurance policy. And you can say it's just like the Jordan Love situation and Aaron Rodgers. Sure, I'll give you that. But these guys are doing something in Minnesota that Sam has never experienced. And I think that there is tremendous value in that. And there's no dollar amount over whatever he is actually owed. Some guys try to bite off more than they can chew in that department. He's going to get paid. And I would hope that it's going to be in Minnesota. And I would imagine the guys in that locker room feel the same exact way.
I do wonder, though, because $70 million cap space, yes, that's a lot of cap space, but they have to basically re-sign their entire secondary, whether it's Cam Bynum, Byron Murphy, Stephon Gilmore, Harrison Smith. Like, they're all hitting free agency after this season. So there are players they need to bring back. And there are also places on this roster that could stand to be upgraded as well. So there are needs besides, obviously, just one him. And it becomes a lot easier if you're not paying him $30 million, right? It's like, do you shoot for the moon or do you go with what you got? Because what you got still only a 2-loss team. I do want to ask you, though, this, JJ. Do you think if they were to tag him, would there be a market for a tag and trade situation that would go above what they would get by just letting him walk and getting the compensatory pick back in return, that end of the third rounder?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say very rarely do we see that happen, right? It's way more like the three of us talking about that than that actually happening. So understanding that it is a rare thing that takes place in the NFL, you could see it. However, you would have to execute that within 5 to 6 weeks of the start of free agency, because as we know, and the NFL calendar is always like this, mid-March is the start of free agency. You're going to have to tag him by that point. And then everyone else is going to decide what they're going to do at quarterback. We're going to be able, frankly, in just a couple of weeks to determine who's really going to be taking Cam Ward and who's going to be taking Shedeur Sanders, right? Once the draft order is set, there could be some questions about it, but ultimately we know that two teams are going to take care of their quarterback needs there. And then when you get to March, we're going to see how the free agent quarterback class shakes out. And so by the time you truly get to that, a tag and trade scenario, for example, a lot of folks have already sort of settled into their Latin life. for that point. So I don't know that we would necessarily see that. And again, I don't think the Vikings want to get too cute with this, but you bring up a great point about the secondary, about the other expenses they have, and that is why tagging Sam Darnold, that immovable figure, which I imagine is around $40 million or so, you don't want that tying up your cap. You could still pay Sam Darnold a Baker Mayfield-like deal and lower that cap number. That's why that option is much more preferable.
All right, let's take a move on here to Tom Brady and the sort of dichotomy between him as the broadcaster right now, and yet him is also the part owner of the Las Vegas Raiders, who seems to have a lot of influence in that organization. I guess I want to start with this. How much influence does he really have in that Raiders organization in terms of decision-making going forward if they do want to fire Antonio Pierce, if they do want to draft or make a big play for a quarterback in this draft? How much input is Tom Brady going to have?
I think he's going to have a great deal of input. I think that because Mark Davis has said it to my face on a couple of occasions, going back to the league meetings in October in Atlanta and then going back 2 weeks ago when we were in the greater Dallas area at the league meetings. He wants Tom Brady to have a huge voice, he said. And I don't think that that necessarily means that Tom Telesco, the general manager there, now a two-time GM, is going to call Tom Brady and say, hey, what do you think about this 3 technique that we're thinking about bringing in on a Tuesday because we've had a couple of injuries? But the big stuff, Tom Brady's getting a call from Mark Davis. They may even FaceTime, perhaps set up a Zoom to discuss what the future of the Raiders organization looks like. And so we are talking about at the head coach position. We're talking about the quarterback position. And Mark Davis has even said he wants Brady to help select that quarterback. It almost sounded, again, my opinion, it almost sounded like Brady would have a greater influence on the next quarterback of the Las Vegas Raiders than even the general manager. But let's focus, and you asked on Antonio Pierce, the head coach. They get that win yesterday, and everybody was feeling good, Mark Davis himself included. But if Antonio Pierce is a one and done, and that's what a lot of people around the league believe could happen. Mark Davis is not saying that, but he's also not saying that, right? If that is to occur, he wants Tom Brady to have a say. Well, he also has told Tom Brady's employer that, hey, we're going to respect his gig, and his gig is running through the Super Bowl this year. So we're talking about February 9th, February 10th, where if Mark Davis is keeping his promise and he's going to let Tom do Tom's thing on television, that Tom isn't going to be able to have that huge voice with the Raiders until we get to mid-February. So if a move is made on a head coach in Antonio Pierce and then the search that will take weeks, what then happens over January? What then happens into February? Those are questions that certainly will be needing some answers.
JJ, my take is that Tom Brady is as prepared as anybody in our business. And while many of us are waiting to see how this thing plays out with Fox's coverage of the Super Bowl and Tom Brady obviously going to be in New Orleans and be a huge part of that production, who's to say that Tom Brady didn't already tell Mark Davis what he wants at the before any of this stuff? And whether or not that's legal, I would just assume that a guy like Tom Brady has preferences. He probably feels no guilt or remorse about expressing them. And being that he is part of the ownership group with the Las Vegas Raiders, it would be almost common sense that Tom Brady would speak up almost immediately about what his thoughts are on the quarterback draft, the head coaching situation, big time roster moves, keystone type deals for your program. I just don't see him waiting till after the Super Bowl for this thing to come out. Obviously, throughout the course of the pre-draft process, he will be involved. But I think he's probably already given his opinion to Mark Davis.
All I'll say to cap this off here is that Brady, the Raiders, the NFL, they need to figure this out, because on the broadcast, he is like terrified to make any waves, to say anything negative or have any sort of take on anything going on the football field. And it's just not worked out, in my opinion, the way Fox had hoped. All right, JJ, thanks so much for joining us today, as he does every single Monday. We're going to be back right after this to get Kyle Long's strongest take of the week. Coming up next. All right, Kyle's got strong takes, and he has nowhere else to give them out besides this show, this block. Kyle, what is your strongest take of the week?
My strongest take is that Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, absolutely wants to coach Caleb Williams and wants to be the head coach of the Chicago Bears next year. I know that there's been a lot of talk about him maybe waiting in the wings for that Cincinnati job to open up, a great opportunity to coach Joe Burrow. But you take a look at what Caleb Williams has done against the Detroit Lions, and the guy has absolutely competed. He's put his arm talent on full display. And when Ben Johnson rolled that offense into Chicago yesterday and busted out the fumble rooski, it was so disrespectful in so many eyes of football fans. But in my opinion, it was awe-inspiring. It's like when I'm on Instagram and I'm checking out these beautiful orchestrated drone shows with, 50,000 drones taking off at the same time and making animals and shapes in the air. That's what the Ben Johnson offense looks like. It's orchestrated to perfection. There is absolute cohesion. There's a reason for the madness. And when you can start the game as quickly as the Detroit Lions offenses do, more often than not, it is, in my opinion, an indicator that they have the right guy at the offensive coordinator position. Yeah, they have a better offensive line. Yeah, Jared Goff has been unbelievable this year. Yeah, they've got some guys who are down the field and catch the football and separate. And Jameson Williams runs a 4-2-3. But at the end of the day, he sees in Chicago that quarterback, Caleb Williams, and what he can mold that ball of clay into as an offense. I think yesterday was his magnum opus. I think that the doubts about Jared Goff not being able to play in the cold weather were dispelled. And quite frankly, I think Ben Johnson wants to be a Chicago Bear. That's my strongest take. Yeah, I don't know what you think, Mike.
It felt more like wishful thinking than a strongest take. And I get it. He praised him. And if you just look at Caleb Williams against the Lions this year, 2 games, in those 2 games, almost 600 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. You extrapolate that out for a full season. That
feels like both of these characters are like, hey, look at me, look what I can do. Yeah. Look what I can do. Maybe you and me.
If I'm a Bears fan, if I'm Caleb Williams, I am chomping at the bit to get Ben Johnson in charge of that offense, because when you watch what the Detroit Lions do and what makes it so just impressive is it's such defined where Jared Goff is going. Like, the offense has it's so meticulously planned out with the window dressing, with the use of different formation, with the usage of different personnel. They basically know exactly where they're going to attack you on any given play and know where the ball is going to go. That's why it looks just Goff hits the back foot, balls out, and it's where it needs to be in that offense, just 7-8 yards every single time they drop back. Now, you need some talent in Chicago the way Detroit does on the offensive line, specifically because it works, because they can run the ball so effectively. But the thing that the Chicago Bears have that Detroit doesn't even have is you can get the quarterback involved in the running game. If you give Ben Johnson a mobile quarterback and just untap those aspects of the playbook that are just off limits when you have Jared Goff, you ain't putting Jared Goff on a QB keeper. He ain't doing, quarterback power, running anything short yards for you. You can do that with Caleb Williams, though. Guy's built like a running back. So I do think, given what he had to say and what they have on that roster right now in Chicago, it would be an unbelievable fit. It's just, does Ben Johnson want to go face his former team twice a year for the next decade? Is he going to want to do that? Do you think he would want to do that? Just like, I know you.
Well, I think that Ben Johnson understands his value more than anybody. And so does Aaron Glenn. And both these guys are going to get plucked and most likely end up as head coaches. We are obviously all in love with Dan Campbell and the things he's been able to get accomplished as a head coach. But the car can't go without tires. And if you take 2 tires off a car, you're going to make that thing work a lot harder, and you're going to find out about the other, what they brought to the show. So for the Lions moving forward, I'm interested to see if they can maintain this excellence on both sides of the football. If we get Ben Johnson, I'll just be happy he's with us.
All right, that was a pretty good, strong take from you. After this, we're going to get to our overreactions versus reality coming out of Week 16 right after this. It's everyone's favorite game, overreaction versus reality. We're pretty close to like everything being reality. I think at 18 weeks into the season, it is just reality, but we're only 16. weeks through the season here. So overreaction versus reality. The first one, a Michael Penix led Atlanta Falcons team, if he had started week 1, would have won the NFC South already. Overreaction.
It's a very important caveat there. Starting since week 1, obviously with Penix, I feel like they are not going to be able to beat Jayden Daniels and the Washington Commanders. But if I, look back in time and I can imagine what this offense is supposed to look like, it's with Michael Penix at quarterback, and I do think that they would have won the NFC South if he was the quarterback from the beginning of the season. I truly do, and I mean, your guys there in Atlanta, and we know he's a mastermind of offense, and so many things open up with Michael Penix Jr. at the quarterback position. I could say reality for that one.
Man, as much as, rookie quarterbacks, he probably would have struggled maybe early on in some of the games that Kirk won. He also would have shown up in some of the games that Kirk did not. And so,
yeah, I think about that shootout against Tampa Bay, and I'm like, maybe that doesn't happen for Michael Penix either. But at the end of the day, he's not going to go on that big lull like Kirk did.
Yes. So I think I'm going to say overreaction, just because there may have been games that he lost that Kirk won, but there also would have been games that he won that Kirk lost. But I do think very much so at this point in time, right, with how Kirk looked lately, that this was almost overdue. Like, I think I would have gone back 4 weeks earlier. They would have won the NFC South already had you started Michael Penix. He looks that good right now, but also it's like some of that is being able to spend 2 months on the bench in an offense and know it down pat before you ever have to take a snap. That helps too.
Yeah.
All right. Next one here. Bryce Young, since being benched, coming back, has been playing at a Pro Bowl quarterback level. Overreaction or reality?
Well, the Pro Bowl level, that's a really wide window. There's a lot of different levels of quarterbacks that
not the Mitch Trubisky Pro Bowl level.
But right? I will say that that's rude. I will say this. When you're in the basement and you can't see light out the windows. Those basements in the Midwest where it's like half earth in the window and half light. Like, he saw a little bit of light, but since the benching, he's moved onto the first floor and the second floor of the building, and he looks out and he can see trees and he can see clouds. I think it's been just as impressive, his performances on the field, his attitude and his never say die demeanor, the way he hasn't pointed fingers at anybody throughout the course of his situation. And he's been in a really tough one over the course of the last 2 calendar years, but he has battled, man. I'm going to say overreaction, but my God, he's been impressive.
Yeah, I'm going to say overreaction too, but it's been close. If you go by PFF passing grade, he is the 9th highest graded passer since returning to the NFL. Obviously, that's not quite Pro Bowl, right? I mean, Pro Bowl is going to be like top 4 in each conference at worst. So that'd be 8. But that's on the precipice. That's about as close as you can get. So I do think that Bryce right there. Last one, real quick here. The Indianapolis Colts will make the playoffs in the AFC. Overreaction, reality.
What needs to happen there, Mike? I'm terrible
so
with these situations.
They need the Broncos to lose out and them to win their next 2 games. The Colts have the Pats and the Raiders coming up next. The Broncos have the Bengals and the Chiefs in Week 18.
Colts are going to make the playoffs. Colts will make the playoffs. Woo! And it's a shame that it came so close with Jonathan Taylor fumbling the football in Denver. Man, oh man, oh man. It's got to come down to the wire, doesn't it, Mike? I'm going to say reality. The Colts will make the playoffs.
I don't think they do, because I think the Broncos end up beating the Bengals this weekend. Their offense look like they're struggling, but it's the Bengals defense. Everyone goes to town on the Bengals defense. So give me the Broncos, no Colts, just for entertainment's sake. We don't want to see them. All right, that's your show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back on Thursday at 1 p.m. Pushing the Pile, CBS Sports Network. Until next time, keep pushing.